California, and there are two very different laws.
Exactly.
I believe California, both parties need to know, and in New York, only one.
Yeah.
But I'm not a lawyer, but I think
that is right.
All right, Gloria, thank you very much.
Sure.
A big development here, broken by Gloria. Jeffrey Toobin is back with me, and also joining us, President Bill Clinton's advisor, Paul Begala, and former Trump campaign advisor, Steve Cortez. So, Jeff, let me start with you, though. You know, what we know is they have tapes of conversations between these two lawyers.
Right. And let me give you an example of something investigators will be very interested in.
Yes.
Which is, Cohen has said that the reason he paid Stormy Daniels out of his own money was that he wanted to protect the Trump family. He said it had nothing to do with the campaign, even though it was October 28th when the deal was struck, right before the election. If there are tapes of him talking to Stormy's lawyer about the election and saying, we got to get this done before the election, then it puts Cohen in more jeopardy of a campaign finance violation, because it looks like the money is an unlawful campaign contribution. So certainly one thing that the investigators will be listening for is any references to the campaign in those conversations.
You know, it also begs the question, Steve, of why Michael Cohen would save these calls, right? Presumably because he thought he looked good in them, or that he needed the evidence or good in them to show somebody else, maybe his only client, Donald Trump. I don't know, but Steve, does it seem strange to you that he would record this stuff?
I mean, look, that's a question to ask him, not me. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not Michael Cohen. What I am is an American who supported Donald Trump, and who supported Donald Trump, I think, like most Americans who supported him, knowing full well, by the way, that there was a colorful past there, particularly before he was a politician. So is this really revelatory? Like, is this really news to most of America that perhaps a dozen years ago he had a one-night stand or he had an affair? If true, and I'm not saying it is, but if true, like, would that have changed anyone's votes? Would that change our decision of what he's doing today as President of the United States? I guess my answer to all of those questions would be no, not relevant, not germane, nothing to do with today. This is a witch hunt. I mean, can't we understand that?
So, Paul, do you think it's a witch hunt, or do you put more stake in what the president's close advisors are saying tonight, which is that they believe the investigation into Michael Cohen is a greater and more imminent threat to the president than Bob Mueller's investigation?
Yeah, I was actually agreeing with Cortez until that last statement. In other words, I don't think voters cared at all that Mr. Trump had a checkered, colorful private life. Why then pay Stormy Daniels $130,000? There's no allegation that it was non-consensual. Ms. Daniels, in her interview with Anderson,
she's been very clear it was consensual.
Right. So I think Steve's right about that. What he's wrong about is that if in fact, as Toobin says, this was designed to affect the election, and the timing is certainly really suggestive that it was, then you could be in violation of the campaign finance laws. They should have listened to you, Steve. They should, Mr. Trump then should have just come out and said, look, okay, I made a mistake in my marriage, whatever. You know, that would have been fine. But you can't spend if in fact they did, spend $130,000 to affect the election and not report it, not disclose it.
But
hold on. This is an important point. What if it wasn't to affect the election? Let's again, and I'm not saying it happened, but let's say it did. Let's say he did sleep with Stormy Daniels. Wouldn't it be plausible, at least, Paul, that this money might have been spent to preserve his marriage rather than the election? I mean, isn't that plausible?
2 weeks before the election, no. Sorry, because the affair happened like 10 years ago. And
of course, we now know it happened more than once. Go ahead, Jeff.
I also think, you know, I mean, it's fine to be cynical about this election and that, oh, people knew everything about Donald Trump. You know, it may be that people knew that Donald Trump had a complicated marriage, but no one knew, as far as I'm aware, that he was paying hush money to all these women. Right. And I think the fact that that didn't come out may well have had an impact on the election. So the idea that, oh, everyone knew everything about Donald Trump, none of this matters, I don't buy that at all, actually.
Jeffrey, listen,
hush money's problematic.
Everyone knew.
Yeah, go ahead.
This was not, everyone knew. Donald Trump is an outsider. He was not a politician. He did not live his life like a politician. Thank goodness, right?
Is that what it's called, being an outsider, when you pay women hush money for that?
No. But hold on, Jeffrey. Listen, there's a dark side to that. There's also a light side. The light side is that he was not scripted. He was not careful. He was not lawyerly. And I think that's one of the reasons. And you can laugh at me, but it's one of the reasons that he won.
Let's not go
he didn't live a life that lended itself to being a politician. And the American people understood that and knew him very well. The star of the #1 reality show in America. We knew him.
Right.
And he never pretended that he was Francis of Assisi, okay? So that was never offered to the American people. We were not missold. We were not led down a primrose path. We knew who he was.
But having no morals when it
believed
comes
in
to
him.
your sexual life is different than having no morals when it comes to skirting the law to cover it up or lie or pretend.
Right.
I mean, I think there's a lot of people who might see a distinction between those two things.
Right. I think the most important thing about Gloria's reporting is, to quote Jim Comey, "Lordy, there's tapes. There are tapes."
Yeah.
John Oliver didn't know how right he was when he coined this stupid Watergate. Now we have stupid tapes. What the hell? Michael, did you pay full price for that law degree? Because what the hell are you doing recording these things?
Quickly, before
Yes, ma'am.
before we go, I just got to ask you, Keith Davidson,
Yes.
at one point representing all three of the women that we are now aware of, Stormy Daniels, Karen McDougal, and now the Playmate who is involved with the RNC donor.
Right.
I find that to be strange. Am I right to ask a question as to why these three people who ostensibly do not know each other all have the same lawyer?
Well,
Jessica Drake, by the way, also.
It could be that this is simply a specialty he has, and he and you know, lawyers do develop specialties. The more sinister,
But that all these women would know who the lawyer is with that specialty.
But the more sinister possibility is that Cohen himself arranged for these women to be represented by someone he knew he could do business with. That's a more sinister possibility.
Okay, let me give you an even more cynical view. The more cynical view is, and this is, I think, the honest view, and I think this is what Trump voters believe. The swamp is trying to nullify the 2016 election. That is what is going on here. Let's be honest about this. This is about impeachment. It's not about a crime. There's no crime here. It's about
you don't have any idea if
to,
there's a crime. I mean, Steve, just to be fair, right? I mean,
it's about trying to create the conditions for impeachment because so many people, particularly elites in media and entertainment, cannot accept that they got 2016 so wrong. And so this is their attempt to try to go back and hit the redo button. Let's find something salacious,
So, Steve, if there's a criminal
sexy
investigation that's been going on for an extended period of time in the Southern District of New York, and they get a warrant for a no-knock essential search, you just are going to dismiss that as media politics?
Listen, I believe this. I think this is the swamp acting at its very worst, trying to nullify the will of people in 2016. I do.
Okay, so you have someone here saying that law enforcement is now part of a political media cabal against Trump.
Yeah, I mean, respectfully, I just think it's ridiculous. I mean, you have the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District, you have the FBI, you have the Mueller investigation, which has assembled all these guilty pleas already, and the idea that this is some attempt by the elites, whoever they are, to redo the election.
Well, we know who they are.
It's just silly. Oh, you do? Well, you give me a list sometime, I guess.
Well, but yeah,
well, it would start with the DOJ. It would start with McCabe and Mueller and Rosenstein. And yes, and by the way, the Department of Justice, unfortunately, has been insanely politicized, and that's a shame because rank and file FBI
all the Republicans leading this investigation in the Southern District of New York, because they are all Republicans, Steve. Just like
being Republican doesn't mean anything with this president. I mean, Aaron, respectfully, we know that, right? The Republicans in Washington D.C. are as obstructionist as the Democrats, if not more so, toward this president. This is the swamp against the people, and that's what's going on here. That's the reality of the bottom line here.
Okay.
This is why squids squirt ink to try to cloud the waters. Nice try, Cortez.
I'm glad that you finished that so I can understand. I'm like, wait a minute, now I get it. Okay.
Wow.
Thank you all. I appreciate it. Next, the president pardons former Bush administration official Scooter Libby. Is he sending a message to former aides caught up in the Mueller probe? Valerie Plame, the CIA operative outed by the Bush administration, is out front next. And breaking news, the president increasingly frustrated on the speed of the U.S. response to Syria. New reporting on the warning he's getting from his military advisors tonight.